Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Happy Aloha Friday. Thanks so much for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei Suji. And Ryan, today we're shining the spotlight on the issue of Red Hill. A lot of news has broken in regards to that issue in the last 2 weeks. And so we've asked a guest who's always popular to join us this morning. That's
right. We're going to be catching up with Ernie Lau from the Board of Water Supply. It has been about a week since that explosive report was revealed. Many things that Ernie Lau has some strong opinions about, so we're happy to bring him in this morning. Good morning, sir. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. Aloha.
Let's talk about the report that was released just about a week ago, last week, and what we found, or a few weeks ago, about the findings and some of the revelations that painted a much different picture than what I think many people expected. Your thoughts about what was revealed in that report?
It was very, I think the report points to a lot of operational issues and problems with how the facility was operated by the personnel and the command in charge of the facility. It was, I think it just it was actually, I think I used the word disturbing to see such a thing happen, because after the fuel leak back in 2014 from tank number 5, 27,000 gallons leaked out of tank number 5. We were given a lot of assurances by the Navy that they have looked at their procedures, that they're ensuring that the facility is well operated. And then to now fast forward to 2022 and to see this report, it was actually, for me, very disappointing because I was under the impression, having been told to my face, that they had improved operations. Everything is being well run, and now we have this problem that's created a real crisis for our community.
And expanding on that, since that report was revealed, there was also video that was released through Civil Beat, getting that video of the incident itself. You see the jet fuel just streaming out of those pipes. We were told initially when this first happened that there was no video footage of the incident, and now we see that. I'd just like to get your reaction to what you saw on that tape.
It was actually very frightening to see that, the amount of fuel just spewing out of the drain line that was for the fire protection system that normally shouldn't contain that fuel. And also, what I noticed, is spilling on the tunnel and spreading along that tunnel. I know that having been in that facility in December, that there's actually a drainage system underneath the floor there to actually get rid of the rainwater that seeps into that tunnel on a regular basis. And that was now actually, that drain system was now dripping water, fuel into the environment, into the aquifer eventually. One thing I noticed in seeing that, it looks like there was a fine, maybe mist that you could see in the air. It looked a little foggy. So I was thinking, wow, there was also potentially a real risk for a fire or an explosion under those conditions. I haven't been in the tunnel. Not far from that location, there's a big exhaust fan there that actually draws air from the tunnel and exhausts it out to the environment. So that probably helped to reduce the fire risk. But I think contamination of water, but also fire risk, I think looked to me to be very real under those conditions. Very frightening.
Something else that was outlined in that report is the process of the defueling and the timeline by which it's going to take. You've spoken out last week about this, saying that you thought that was not acceptable. Has there been any further discussions? And if you can share more about your thoughts on the timeline they've laid out to defuel this Red Hill.
Well, the that whole facility back about 79 years, almost 80 years ago, was built in 3 years, including those pipelines. So to give themselves up to 2.5 years to actually defuel the facility, empty out the tanks and empty out the pipelines, almost as long as it took to build the whole facility. So to me, that is not acceptable. They need to look at shortening that time frame. They need to do it safely, but they need to compress that time frame as much as possible, because every moment fuel is out there stored in that facility, 100 feet of barbed wire, drinking water aquifer. It's a potential for more damage to be caused to our aquifer from fuel contamination.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the timeline. Where do you see the room to kind of condense it, if you will? We know that, a lot of piping needs to be repaired for it to safely flow out of there. But what do you think is a more realistic and acceptable timeline to defuel those tanks?
It's really hard for me because I'm not an expert in fuel facilities, and I'm not 100% familiar with Red Hill. But being in that lower access tunnel where the pipelines are located and seeing it for myself, there are 3 large pipelines in that tunnel. And I'm not sure if this is even feasible. So I'm talking from a lay person standpoint here. 3 large pipelines, a 16-inch diameter pipeline, a 18-inch diameter pipeline, and I believe the largest being a 32-inch pipeline. For me, one crazy thought, and this may not even be feasible, but rather than trying to repair all 3 pipelines, and you're simply trying to achieve emptying out the tanks, maybe 15 tanks of fuel that's stored there, why not just focus your efforts on one of the pipelines and use that pipeline for multiple types of fuel, but just basically focus your efforts, perhaps reduce your costs and reduce your time it takes to get it done, but just use one pipeline just to empty out the fuel from all 20 tanks. And when they empty it out, there's no pumping involved. All they have to do is open the valves and let it gravity flow back to Pearl Harbor. So that's a crazy thought right now.
Since we began this discussions with you, one of the things that you've always talked about is getting access to this report, being able to see it so you can understand more of the impact that it has had directly with our water supply and how it relates to the organization, of course, in which you manage. Knowing what you know now about what was discovered and revealed in that report, does that change anything about the future of the Halawa shaft, the usage, anything that you've learned through that report that may impact the future uses of any of the aquifers that we used to use?
I think the report just reinforces the need that we really press forward as expeditiously as possible into the investigation of what's happening with the underground aquifer in that whole valley that we know from one side to the other side, it's physically connected, that groundwater potentially can move across the valley. So really that investigation to me becomes even more urgent under these circumstances. And we see that now they're looking to the end of 2024 to defuel, and that could even stretch out longer. So we need to really push forward and actually start to drill more monitor wells outside of Navy property, more into Halawa Valley, to see how far fuel contamination might have already spread and what's happening with the groundwater there.
Well, I'm interested to know. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I do talk too much sometimes. So stop me anytime.
Not at all. My question, though, is on those monitoring wells. We've asked you about them in the past. Can you give us an update on, what you're finding and how you've been able to actually do the testing up until this point?
So what we're doing is we are testing at our 5 wells nearest this facility, 4 to the north and 1 well to the south. We've been testing for 8 years, so we continue to do that test. We have just selected a contractor to drill another monitor well in Halawa Valley, just on the other side of the state's prison there. So we're working with the landowner to actually get started with that. So the contract hasn't been fully executed, but once that's done, we're going to issue the notice to proceed for him to, that contractor to start drilling that well and to gather more information. We are looking at other sites for wells monitor wells or test wells in that Halava Valley, and we're going to proceed to move forward with that. In addition to whatever the EPA or DOH requires of the Navy to do. We are also proceeding to drill look for new water replacement wells, what we call exploratory wells, to replace the 3 wells. If we never can turn those 3 wells on again, we're trying to develop replacement capacity. So those are some of the actions what we're doing. But definitely, I think we all need to move forward with the investigation even faster here. There's a sense of urgency. Thank you for letting me ramble here. But when I looked at what's happening in Congress with the National Defense Authorization Act I noticed in that on the House version that's going to the floor for a vote, this is the authorization, not actually the appropriation bill. The authorization in Congress on the House side, I think they're giving the Navy 1 year less to defuel. So the deadline I saw in that proposed bill that'll be voted on next week sets a deadline of end of 2023 instead of end of 2024.
Let's talk a little bit about those discussions. Are you working with the congressional delegation? What are you advising them about how they can provide some support or just general information to their colleagues in DC that might help them to make these types of decisions and that might impact us directly here in Hawaii?
We are talking to them, and I appreciate them taking the time to actually speak to me. We've let them know that the estimated cost to drill replacement wells right now, our best guess at that number is around $195 million to replace the capacity of those 3 wells. And I'm still learning how things work in Congress, but they made it clear that what they have to appropriate is probably in phases over time, and they'll be working with us to look for opportunities. So I appreciate their help, all 4 of our congressional delegation.
You made reference to the fact that those 3 wells might not ever reopen. There's a question here from Heidi. I believe she means the wells, not the aquifer, but she says, aloha, with the aquifers under Red Hill closed, what impact will it have on building, the affordable home building, and the ability to support tourism needs? We've talked in the past about prioritizing water permits, and if it were to come to that, what is the latest on that, given that those 3 wells could basically shut down indefinitely?
The latest right now, when we look at the 2 water systems, the Aiea Halava water system and the Honolulu water system. For the smaller Aiea Halava system, what we have done recently is a well that normally would serve Honolulu, we've redirected that well to actually serve the smaller Aiea Halava system. With the shutdown of Halava wells and Aiea wells, the supply shortage is even greater than in the Honolulu water system. So we've added additional capacity with that other well, Ka'amila wells now, to feed Aiea Halava. So that's giving a little buffer there. So we anticipate that this summer we hope to avoid being into mandatory conservation and any restrictions on water meters, and stay in voluntary conservation with a 10% reduction target. For the Honolulu water system, we've got 3 of the 5 pumps that are out of service at Kalihi Pump Station. This is one of our oldest pumping stations, built about 122 years ago. And we've got 3 of the 5 pumps. And that happened about 3 to 4 weeks ago. The contractor worked really hard, and 3 of those pumps are now pumping into the Honolulu water system. We're also about a little over a month ago, we started to move water, actually more than a month ago, about 2.5 million gallons of water from our Waipio wells into Honolulu. That's out toward Waipahu, and we actually now move water from the Waipahu area into feeding Honolulu. So that's added some capacity. We also got one of our 2 wells that were out of service at Kalawao wells. We actually recently, just within the last couple of weeks, put that back into operation. So that's added some capacity in the Honolulu water system. So we anticipate staying in voluntary conservation. And we believe at the moment we can handle any kind of new development that comes up. But we are also looking forward in time to see what the new projects might be built in Honolulu and Aiea Halawa. So that's giving us some estimates of what that future water demand might be. And we know that for now we have capacity, but we need to add capacity by either developing new wells to feed the system or get Halawa shaft back online, Aiea wells back in service, and also pursue people's help in conserving water to actually free up more capacity in those two water systems. So water conservation, new source development, moving water around from different water systems, finding out if we can safely turn on those 3 shutdown wells. Those are all part of the solutions we're looking at.
I mean, and just talking about some of those developments, I mean, you look at the plans for Aloha Stadium, obviously a big development there that includes a mixed use of entertainment and housing. Of course, that will be one of those projects that you mentioned that would have to come into consideration at a later date in time. But I'm wondering if we can focus a little bit about something else you said about the voluntary 10% reduction. Have you seen the water use go down? Do you think that the people in our community are heeding that warning that you have given and the alarm that you sounded for some time now, advising people to reduce their water? Have you noticed that in any of the meters?
Yes, we have seen reduction in water use from conservation, a combination of conservation and rain, like Yunji was talking about earlier with me. When it rains, people use less water because outdoor water usage goes down. But we think that conservation is really starting to take hold in our communities, that people are heeding to the message. And if you just drive around town right now, like past the Capital District area, you'll notice the lawn is not as green. There are more brown spots. And I think the Board of Water Supply right now, we've practically killed our lawn. It's completely brown. But, that's an indication that we're using less water to irrigate. So I believe everybody is starting to heed the message and do their part. Water conservation is actually a very simple thing. And everybody doing their part, even in little ways, when you collectively look at it, it can make a difference. What we saw island-wide in terms of how much we have to pump for the month of May, we actually dropped quite a bit lower than in April. And what we see is that we're lower than the 5-year monthly average. So that's a good sign. And we actually are lower right now than how much we had to pump back in 2021 for the same period in time. So I think it's really taking hold. And I just want to just say a big mahalo to everybody for your help.
On that subject of conservation, we know that residents have been asked to conserve, and the state says that they are trying to do their part as well. When we've spoken to the governor, he says that he's asked all the agencies to do their part. Of course, there is another large water user, and that is our visitor industry. What are your conversations like with those in the hotels in terms of, and other, sort of subsets of that industry in terms of where they can scale back, and what are you asking them to do?
Yeah, so we've had really good discussions or conversations with the visitor industries, some major hotel chain, the tourism authority, the hotel associations. They've all been very supportive and looking at ways for them to save water. With one of the hotels, we've actually gone out and have conducted a couple water audits, especially in their food and beverage area, which is a big water user within the hotel. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in the visitor industry to conserve water. And they're being really supportive to us.
This is an issue that has brought up a bunch of different topics beyond just, of course, what's happening to our water supply, but it also speaks to the relationship that the state of Hawaii has had with the military and the Navy, specifically with this matter, and the matter of trust. Through this report that was revealed last week, there seems to be obviously clear indications that maybe what was said early on was not actually what was happening, that there was some sort of cover up that may have been happening in some areas, and some downplaying of some serious issues. I'm wondering if you can speak to how what you learned last week in the report has impacted your overall thoughts about the trust and the dynamics between the relationship with the state of Hawaii and the U.S. military.
I'll take the state of Hawaii first. That's a little easier. So, I just want to say thank you to the Director of Health and the Governor for issuing the emergency orders and standing by them. I just want to support them to now implement them and hold the Navy accountable to follow through according to the emergency order. So I think our relationship with the Department of Health and the state of Hawaii, we haven't always seen eye to eye over the last eight plus years over the Navy's Red Hill facility. We've always been taking the position to try to protect and prevent disasters from happening, but I think things are headed in a positive direction with the Department of Health and State of Hawaii. With the Navy, that's another matter. We've been interacting with them for eight and a half years now, and they say one thing, and then you later on find out the reality isn't always consistent with their words. I would hope that now going forward that they are going to be transparent and upfront with us. From the very beginning, 8.5 years ago, we said, just come clean. Just share what you know about this facility and the problems or challenges with it, and we can work together to try to address this. Rather than trying to kind of sugarcoat things and to downplay the seriousness of the issues and problems, just come clean. So going forward, Navy, please just come clean. Just be transparent with our community, with all of us, because the more you try to smooth over things, the worse it'll be in the future.
One of those things, the things that was revealed also was the existence of a lava tube through that area. Can you speak a little bit to that for those who have not perhaps been following this issue so closely? Tell us about the lava tube and what concerns you about it.
This is something that we've always said that is of concern, in Hawaiian geology and the way the islands were created, with lava flows layer upon a layer. And sometimes you have these lava tubes created. And I think a famous one is the Thurston Lava Tube on the Big Island in Volcanoes National Park, where you can actually walk into it. It's like a tunnel. The lava tube is almost like a pipeline within the lava itself. It allows things to flow freely through it. And the thing that concerned me, and I know that in the Red Hill area, as they were building the tanks, they encountered lava tubes as they were doing the hollowing out of the mountain to construct the tanks. So to have a lava tube in Red Hill Shaft in the water development tunnel there, which was noted in the command investigation report, about 300 feet from the end of that water development tunnel, which is in the aquifer itself. We know that last year there was basically heavy fuel contamination in that drinking water source in that water development tunnel. So the thing that concerned me when I read that was that lava tube could be like a pipeline within the lava itself that could allow fuel contamination that was in that drinking water source to maybe perhaps travel into the aquifer and further, maybe quicker. So that was a concern when I saw that. And I'm surprised they put that in the command investigation report. But as soon as I saw that made me very worried.
As we wrap up here, we're almost out of time. I'm wondering if you can spell out what the next steps looks like for you at this point in time, knowing what you know now through this report and where we're at in this process. What is, the priority, say, for the next month or the next few months for you and the department moving forward?
For us, it continues to move on all the different solutions we're looking at. We meet used to be weekly, now it's every other week. I meet with my team to go over where are we at on new wells, where are we at on water conservation. Where are we at on testing old wells and seeing if we can put them back into service? Are we looking at different ways to supply these two water systems and make up for the supply shortages? We'll continue to do that. I think what I'd like to see in the next month or two is actually more discussion about the investigation into the aquifer, the nature and extent of the contamination and how groundwater and the contaminants might be moving, and also a stronger commitment from the Navy to look at shorter timelines to defuel the facility. It's going to be very important, and also in the next month, and actually maybe in the next few weeks, also to see what happens in Congress in terms of appropriations and authorizations for the DoD on the Red Hill issue.
Okay, Ernie Lau, thank you so much for the updates this morning. We really appreciate having you on. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
Always great to hear from Ernie Lau, and interesting that he noted that he's tracking some legislation in Congress happening that they will be voting on in the next week. He says in the House version of a defense actually a funding bill, that it would change the timeline from Congress's perspective to force the Navy to do the defueling a year earlier than was laid out by the Navy itself in the timeline that we saw released just a week ago. So that could be something that forces the Navy's hand and really accelerates the timeline, something that we should all be tracking. On the sort of broader scale, there's still a lot of mistrust, you can tell, between his agency and the military when it comes to disclosures, just because of all the things that was revealed in that report.
Yeah, a lot of that, what was revealed in that report, caused even further questions. And you heard at the end there him talking about the lava tube, something that maybe they had thought would existed, but really did not have any clear indication. But of course, this report revealing a lot of different things from a variety of areas, including how this all happened and all leading up to this process and this timeline for the defueling, which Ernie Lau saying is not acceptable, that they need to find a quicker way, albeit do it safely, but find a quicker way to defuel this facility. He also noted the conservation efforts and the messaging that the Board of Water Supply has really been trying to get out into the community about water conservation, and that voluntary reduction of 10% seems to be holding and seems to be sticking with those members in the community. He's saying that right now there is no need for a mandatory conservation or cut back in water usage, but that many in the community, he believes, are heeding the warning and trying to do their best to reduce their water usage.
Yeah, so always great to check in with him. We'll have him on again soon because he obviously knows this issue inside and out and has been doing so much to advocate for our safe drinking water. And we appreciate him and his time this morning. On Monday, we're going to be switching back the conversation to COVID. We know that there are two new variants in the islands that seem to be taking a foothold here, the BA4 and BA5. So what does it mean? And really, over the last, I'd say 6 months or so, the protocols always seem to be changing in terms of what to do if you test positive, when to quarantine, who's eligible for meds, all of those things. So we are going to be talking with Dr. Todd Allen, who is the Queen's Health System Chief Quality Officer. He'll give us an update on the hospital, and also, Ryan, help us out with some how-tos.
Yeah, a lot of questions out there about people who are suffering through COVID or who have found themselves who are tested positive, about what to do and how to move on after COVID as well. So looking forward to that conversation. We hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.